Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are heading to a place that, if you're from Toronto, or honestly, even if you've just visited, you know it instantly.
Oh, yeah.
We're walking down the Danforth. You can practically smell the charcoal from the souvlaki pits. You see those iconic blue and white street signs.
The flags waving from the patios.
It is universally, and I mean universally, known as Greek Town.
It is. It's a total sensory landmark. One of those neighborhoods that feels like it has a completely solidified identity.
Right. You go there for a very specific cultural experience.
To be Greek for an evening, smash a plate, yell Opa, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. It's marketed as the ultimate Greek experience in North America. But, and this is why I love doing this, we have this massive stack of sources here. Articles, historical surveys, census data. And they suggest that the blue and white branding is actually telling only half the story. Maybe even less.
It's a classic case of what you might call municipal marketing, covering up a much more complex demographic reality. The surface is crystal clear, but the foundation is, well, it's complicated.
Right. Because the premise of today's deep dive is, I think, a bit of a shocker for anyone who grew up going to the Taste of the Danforth.
For sure.
What if I told you that the people who built Greektown, the people flipping the souvlaki and running the diners, weren't necessarily who the signs say they are?
I think people would be surprised.
What if the Danforth is actually a Macedonian town hidden in plain sight?
It sounds provocative, almost like a conspiracy theory. But when you look at the surveys and the immigration patterns, it's just a factual reality that got buried under a really, really successful brand.
And what's truly fascinating is that this blurred line between Greek and Macedonian, it doesn't just stop at Danforth and Pate.
No, it goes all the way up to the most famous Greek icon of all time.
And we are talking about the man himself.
We are absolutely talking about Zorba.
Who is Zorba? Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because that reveal at the end is going to blow people's minds. I want to start on the street level.
Let's do it.
We have these documents analyzing the Danforth's history, and the first thing that just jumps out is the sheer scale of the population we're discussing.
I honestly had no idea the Macedonian diaspora in Toronto was this big.
It's massive, and it's not just big in a Canadian context, it's big globally.
Really?
Yeah. Estimates put the Macedonian diaspora in Toronto at somewhere between 100,000 and 150,000 people.
Wow.
That makes Toronto home to one of the largest Macedonian communities outside the Balkans.
That's the size of a mid-sized city just existing within Toronto.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for a huge chunk of that population, specifically mid-century, their entry point into Canadian life wasn't a factory or an office.
It was the kitchen.
It was the kitchen of a restaurant on the Danforth.
And this is where the numbers get really interesting. I was looking at the historical data from the Danforth Business Improvement Area, the BIA. The surveys from the 70s and 80s, right? The peak immigration wave.
Yeah, the golden age of the Danforth, when it really cemented its reputation.
Okay.
So the statistics show that at that peak, over 60% of the food service businesses
60%! Think about that for a second.
they were owned by immigrants from the broader region of Macedonia, not Athens, not the islands.
That is a commanding majority. It means if you walked into 10 diners or steakhouses in 1980, 6 of them were run by families who, well, depending on how they identified privately, might not have considered themselves Greek in the way we understand it.
So this is the big question. If you're a Macedonian immigrant, you own the restaurant, your neighbors own the restaurants, you're all from the same region. Why call it Greektown? Why not Little Macedonia?
That's where hard-nosed business pragmatism collides with a very messy, very painful history. You have to put yourself in their shoes.
An immigrant restaurant owner in 1970s Toronto.
Exactly. You're trying to feed your family. You need customers walking through that door.
And the Toronto public knows what a Greek salad is.
They know exactly what it is. Greek culture had incredible global brand recognition. Souvlaki, feta, moussaka. These were words that hungry Torontonians understood.
Whereas Macedonian would have required a lecture before every appetizer.
Precisely. Imagine a customer walking in on a Friday night. They just want dinner. They do not want a 20-minute history lesson on the geopolitical partitioning of the Balkans.
Or the fall of the Ottoman Empire.
Or the nuances of Slavic versus Greek dialects. It was just easier and frankly more profitable to use the Greek umbrella. It was a brand.
Is it just a marketing decision?
In large part, yes, but it's also about geography. I mean, many of these families came from regions like Larin or Florina or Koster, which are in northern Greece today. So technically, they came from the Greek state.
But ethnically, linguistically.
Many were distinct, but to the average Torontonian, it's all just delicious Mediterranean food.
This brings us to a term in the notes that I really want to unpack.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the key.
Okay.
It's a specific cultural descriptor. Grokomani, or grokomoni.
Wow.
I've never heard this before.
It is the skeleton key for this entire conversation. You have to understand grokomani.
Which translates to what, exactly? Greek man.
Close. It essentially means Greek admirer or Greek follower, but it's a loaded term. It describes ethnic Macedonians, people who often spoke a Slavic language at home, who adopted a Greek national identity.
And this wasn't just a casual choice, like picking a favorite sports team.
No. This was often about survival.
Right. The notes mention the geopolitical pressure cooker of the Balkans in the early 20th century. The Balkan Wars, the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire.
Exactly. Boundaries were shifting literally overnight. Suddenly you find yourself in a territory where the official language, the schools, the church, the path to a government job, it's all Greek.
So aligning yourself with the Greek state.
And the Greek Orthodox Church was the only way up.
Yeah.
If you wanted social mobility for your children, or if you just wanted to avoid harassment, it was the path of least resistance.
It was a survival strategy.
For many, yes. For others, it became a genuine cultural shift over generations. But the core driver was often necessity. You become what the state requires you to be.
So when these families came to Canada, that dynamic didn't just vanish at the border. They brought it with them to the Danforth.
Precisely. So for a business owner who fell into that grokomani category, the Greek town branding wasn't a lie. It was a natural fit. It was their public identity. It was safe.
But the notes mention this really interesting split between public and private life, almost like a duality.
And this is the hidden part of the history. You had business owners who operated fully as Greek to the public. They supported the festivals, had the flags in the window.
Sponsored the parades.
Right. But then they go home or to the back of the shop after closing and speak Macedonian. Their Macedonianness was a private community identity.
It's almost like a secret code. The sign out front says one thing, but the language in the kitchen says another.
And it wasn't always a hard line, which makes it confusing. There was a lot of cultural crossover. Similar foods, similar music, shared Orthodox rites. But within the community, everyone knew.
They knew who was who.
They knew who spoke Greek at home and who spoke Macedonian. They knew which village your grandfather was from and which side he took.
What I found fascinating is that you can actually see this identity split on a map of Toronto. It's not just theoretical, it's architectural.
It is. It's the difference between the main street and the neighborhood.
Exactly. On the main drag of the Danforth, the tourist strip, you have St. Demetrios Greek Orthodox Church. It's the anchor.
That's the public face, the official Greek identity.
But if you look at the sources, where did the Macedonian community build their spiritual home? Not on the strip.
No, they went east. As the community grew and became more confident, they moved into Scarborough and built St. Clement of Ohrid,
Which was the first Macedonian Orthodox cathedral in Canada.
And that geographical drift is so telling. The business happens on the Danforth under the Greek flag. But the deep community life, the unfiltered Macedonian identity, migrates eastward, away from the storefronts, into their own distinct space.
It really highlights how successful that branding was, though.
Mm-hmm.
The notes call the Greek town designation in the 80s a masterclass in municipal marketing.
It really was. And you have to give credit. The Greek community had a very strong, centralized political presence. They were organized. They knew how to lobby. The Macedonian reality was more fragmented, more under the radar because of that history. So the label stuck.
And it stuck hard. It's fascinating because as a visitor, you just consume the brand. You don't think about the layers. You just think, wow, great souvlaki.
And when 60% of the owners are from a group that isn't on the sign, well, that's a significant untold story. It's a community building a massive economic engine under someone else's flag.
So we have this pattern on the Danforth. A shiny, marketable Greek surface covering a complex, often Macedonian reality.
A public brand versus a private history?
But the sources suggest this isn't just a Toronto thing. This exact same dynamic applies to the single most famous export of Greek culture in history.
Oh, yeah. We need to pivot.
We need to talk about the icon, the myth.
Zorba, the Greek.
It sounds almost blasphemous to suggest, doesn't it?
It does. If you picture Greekness, you picture Anthony Quinn dancing on that beach in Crete. The music starts slow, then gets faster. It's the global shorthand for the Greek spirit.
But if you dig into the biography of the real man, Because, yes, there was a real man, Georgios Sorbas.
There was.
His life story maps almost perfectly onto those immigrant diner owners we just talked about.
It really is the ultimate irony. The character who represents that passionate, life-loving Greek archetype was based on Georgios Sorbas, and his identity is a lot more complicated than the movie poster.
So let's unpack the real Zorbas. Who was he?
He was born in 1865 in a village called Livadi. This is in the Pieria region. At the time he was born, it was the Ottoman Empire. Today, it's in northern Greece.
In the province of Macedonia.
Exactly. So geographically, he's from the region of Macedonia. And just like the business owners on the Danforth, his identity is the subject of a massive historical tug-of-war.
Who is fighting over him?
Well, Greece celebrates him as a genuine Macedonian, meaning a Greek man from the province of Macedonia, purely Greek. But ethnic Macedonian historians look at his roots, his village, and his later life choices, and argue he has a deep connection to ethnic Macedonian identity.
It's the Grokomani dynamic all over again.
It is. Zorbas navigated a world where Greek was the dominant political label, but his roots were in this multi-layered, complex Macedonian region.
But here's where it gets really surprising. It's not just where he was born. It's where he chose to live and where he's buried.
Right. I think everyone just assumes, he's buried on Crete?
Or Athens, yeah. Somewhere overlooking the agency.
You would think so. But no, the real Georgios Sorbas left Greece. In 1922, he took his daughter, Katina, and moved north.
Where did he go?
He moved to Skopje.
Skopje, as in the capital of what is now North Macedonia.
The very same. He worked as a mining concessionaire. He didn't just pass through. He settled there. He spent the last 2 decades of his life in Skopje.
Wait, so the face of Greece, the man who represents the Hellenic spirit to the world, spent his final years in the heart of the Republic of North Macedonia.
And it gets deeper. He died there in September 1941.
And he's buried there.
He's buried in Skopje, in the Butyl Cemetery, section P17. You can go visit his grave.
That is wild. I'm just trying to process that image.
Think about the cognitive dissonance. You have millions of people watching Anthony Quinn dance the Sirtaki on a Cretan beach thinking, this is the essence of Greece.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the real man's bones are resting in a cemetery in Skopje, in a country that's had a 30-year naming dispute with Greece over the very word Macedonia.
It completely flips the narrative. It's like finding out the Statue of Liberty was built in Moscow.
It's a massive contradiction. And it connects perfectly back to the Danforth. You have a public brand, Zorba the Greek, that is incredibly strong. It sells movies, it drives tourism. But underneath that brand, the actual human history leads you directly into the Macedonian interior.
It's like the Danforth is a microcosm of Zorba, and Zorba is a microcosm of the Danforth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Both are examples of how we simplify complex identities into easy-to-consume labels. Greek is easy, it's sunny, it's olive oil and dancing.
Macedonian Greek border politics and shifting ethnic identities doesn't sell souvlaki to a tourist in 1980.
No, and it doesn't sell movie tickets.
But knowing the truth, does it devalue the Greek experience on the Danforth?
I don't think it devalues it at all. I think it deepens it. It doesn't mean the experience is fake. Those families worked incredibly hard. They contributed to the Greek community.
They supported the church.
But realizing many of them were navigating this Grokomani existence, balancing a public brand with a private heritage, it makes their success story even more impressive.
They navigated a new country while juggling an old identity crisis.
Exactly. And it explains the anomalies. Why are there so many Macedonian landmarks just east of the Danforth? Why is Zorba buried in Skopje? Once you have the key, this idea of the hidden Macedonian history, it all just unlocks.
It reminds us to be critical of labels. A brand is just a surface. The human history is always messier and usually more interesting.
And honestly, it forces us to have a bit of humility. We see a sign and think we know the story, but usually we're just seeing the marketing brochure.
I'm just picturing someone at Zorba's grave in Skopje, maybe humming the theme song and realizing the immense irony of it all.
It is the ultimate irony. The man who taught the world to dance like a Greek chose to live out his days in the Macedonian capital. He was a man of the region, not just a man of one label.
So let's bring this back to the listener. Next time they are in Toronto or any ethnic enclave, Little Italy, Chinatown, Greek town, what should they be looking for?
I would say don't just read the main sign. Look at the edges. Listen to the languages being spoken by the staff when they think no one is listening.
Is it the language on the menu or something else?
Exactly. Look at the community centers and churches that are around the main strip, not just on it. That's where the community preserves its true self.
And specifically for the Danforth.
Enjoy the food. The food is incredible. But understand that the hands preparing it might belong to a diaspora that had to hide part of itself to make it. That souvlaki has a history that goes beyond just Greece.
And maybe pour one out for Georgios Zorbas, resting in Section P-17 in Skopje?
Absolutely. He lived a life big enough to span 2 countries and 2 identities.
It really makes you wonder what other famous cultural icons are hiding a completely different backstory.
Oh, history is full of them. But the Zorba-Danforth connection is one of the clearest examples of how a dominant culture can absorb a smaller one, at least in the public eye.
It's a bit of a history written by the victors situation.
Or maybe marketing written by the pragmatic. The Grokomani choice wasn't about winning or losing. It was about getting by. And look at the result. They built one of the most vibrant neighborhoods in North America.
That's a fair point. Okay. Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one last thing from the sources. The idea of this identity being a spectrum. It wasn't just faking it.
No, and that's important. Identity is fluid. For many of these people, they genuinely felt a connection to both. They were geographically Macedonian, but culturally aligned with Greece. It's not for us to say they were lying.
We're just peeling back the layers to see all the influences, not just the one on the brochure.
Exactly.
It's that nuance that makes the deep dive worth doing. Nothing is ever just black and white.
Or even just blue and white.
So, here's a thought to leave you with. We spend so much time consuming culture, eating the food, watching the movies, visiting the neighborhoods. We accept the labels because they're convenient.
This is Greek town. This is Chinatown. But those borders are drawn by city planners and marketing boards.
Exactly. So next time you're on the Danforth, surrounded by the blue and white ordering your dinner, just take a second. Remember that the spirit of that neighborhood, the grit and the drive that built it, might just be rooted in a small village in the Ottoman Empire.
And might have more in common with a cemetery in Skopje than a beach in Crete.
A huge thank you to our listener for tuning in to this deep dive. It's always a journey.
Keep questioning the signs.
We will catch you on the next one.